Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how to export your files for 3D printing from Fusion in particular, so hope you enjoy. Alright, so this is the file that we've been working on. This is part of the Fusioneers course. If you're interested in joining our community, go to skool.com/Fusioneers and you can get access to this file. We've edited it some in this playlist. If you're new here, you can check out some of those videos, but in this video, I want to show you how to 3D print this. This is really not a great model to 3D print because there's this obvious issue of there's air here, so it couldn't actually stand up, but I'm just trying to show you the basics of exporting files for 3D printing. So the way that you do that is you can come over here, click File, and then Export. And if you do it this way, which I'll go ahead and do it anyway, it's going to export everything that's visible. So you'll get the bottom kind of base, and then you also get the logo here. And generally speaking, you want to use STL files. That's kind of the most common file type for 3D printing, and I can go into more detail on the file types if y'all are interested, but that's kind of the basic file type for 3D printing. Step files will go into most slicers, but generally speaking, most people use STLs at this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and select STL, and you can see that the name's the same as whatever the name of the project or the design name is. So you can change that if you want to, and then you can set your export location and then click export. And you'll see here that it actually has to go in and render this in the cloud, so sometimes this might take a couple minutes. So while that's rendering, I'm going to show you another way to export just individual bodies. So if you want to export just one body, so say we just want to print this little wing part, you can come here and then figure out which one of the bodies that is. So it's this body, and then I'm going to right click and then come down to save as mesh. So if you click on that, then you get this pop-up window here, and you can make multiple selections if you want to. The format, 3MF is another pretty common type of format. STL, again, is kind of the standard. Unit type will be millimeter because we're in millimeter settings here. And then I don't turn on preview. You can do that, but it'll slow down your computer. Refinement can be high, especially for shapes that aren't super complex. And then send to 3D print utility, that's something that you can set up if you want to. I have mine set up to go to Process Slicer, but just for this example, I'm going to turn this off so that we can export it to a file. So I'm just going to click OK. And then one thing to know is that the name that you see here is coming from the body name. So you might have a situation, or it's pretty common to have a single file or a single body in your design instead of multiple like I have here. And people sometimes wonder, where does that name come from? Because if you don't change it, it's just going to say body one. It doesn't matter unless you use that other export method what your design name is. It's going to default to body one. So you can change this to something like wing, for example, and then click save, and it's going to export to this folder that I have selected. Okay, so now it also says that our Fusioneers logo is ready to go, so I'm going to slide over to the folder where I exported those things. So if we just preview the Fusioneer logo, you can see here that this is kind of what we expected. It's all the bodies together, and then if we preview the wing, it's just that single part. So now I'm just going to briefly show you what to do to 3D print. So once you get the STL file, you essentially just need to drag this into your slicer. So I use Prusa Slicer most of the time, so I'm just going to drag this into Prusa Slicer. And so now the next step is to open up Prusa Slicer, or whatever preferred slicer that you want, and import this STL file into that software. So I already have Prusa Slicer installed and opened. This is one of the pretty common slicers. There's different ones out there, but if you're not familiar with 3D printing, essentially what a slicer does is it tells the 3D printer what it needs to do to make your part. So I'm going to go up here to File, and then going to import STL, and you'll see here that Prusa Slicer is pretty good about taking pretty much any type of file. So we could have used the 3MF. One benefit to that is sometimes it has color data with it. Step is another really common file, so you can really pretty much pick what you want here for a Prusa Slicer especially. So I'm going to click on that, and then go find my file. Let's just import the wing for now. You'll see our wing's pretty big, but this is actually the correct scale. If the scale was out of whack, you could probably go back and change some of the settings on the export mesh that we used. And then we can orient this down flat like that, which is the preferred orientation for 3D printing. And then the next step would be to just set your print settings. So this is the layer height, and the bigger the layer, kind of the lower the quality, but it's kind of a trade-off on how long it's going to take. So if you use 0.5 millimeters, this is going to take a really long time, and this will give us an estimate down here in a second of how long this is going to take. So this would take 8 hours if we used ultra detail. And then if you want to go back to a little bit thicker layer height, which is 0.2 millimeters, this is going to take significantly less, so 1 hour, so a lot quicker, obviously. And all that that's talking about is exactly how high each one of these layers are. And I'll go into more detail if anyone's interested in kind of the basics of this. I think most of you are probably at least somewhat familiar with how this works, but this is kind of the inside of the file after it's been sliced. This is called the infill, and you can change how much infill you have. So right now it's set to 15%. If we increase it to something like 70%, that's just going to increase how much of the space is infilled. So you can see that that's a pretty big difference, and that's also going to take a lot longer, but it will also be a lot stronger part. So it's always just a trade-off on speed and strength and material usage with how much infill that you use. And so now all you have to do is export your G code, which is down here. You'll click export, and then you'll find your SD card, put that onto the SD card, and then you can start your printer up. So I hope that all that makes sense. I know it's a couple of steps involved, but overall I think it's fairly straightforward. Just in summary, you export the file using an STL format, and you can use the mesh technique that I showed you. If you have a paid version, there's also a 3D print option. I don't think that's available on all versions, so I didn't talk about that as much, but it's essentially the same thing as exporting a mesh. So you see that it's basically the exact same as exporting mesh. So you can use that if you have that available to you. So that is how you 3D print with Fusion. So thank you for taking the time to watch, and see you in the next one.